Express God in all of its glory. In the past, I have talked about practicing the presence. I've even taught a class here, which probably would be nice to teach it again. All the lessons in this class were very important to learn, of course, as all of them. And I wanted to share some information with you from that as an ending talk to the four-part series I just completed about the I Am consciousness. And to remind you, it was I am the Christ, I am the light, I am awake, I am that I am. And we want to get a deeper understanding of those four and what we're doing with practicing the presence, especially to live from the I am, or the Christ I am consciousness. I have talked again about in the past various moments in life that we have that are really spectacular moments that we could take in and just really feel. And to do that, we've had to be in the moment. We've had to release the past so that we could allow this great event to occur within us, and to stay connected to the moments that occur after that. Let go and connect to another one. And they're all called the moments of Christhood, which is what the title of this talk is about. The correct letter of truth necessary for our own spiritual unfoldment is embodied in the 7 principles that are taught in practicing the presence. And they are, number 1, love God with all your heart, acknowledging that God is the only power and there is no power outside in things that we think there are. Number 2, love your neighbor as yourself. Refrain from all judgment as good or evil, forgiving 70 times 7. And praying for your enemies. Number 3, recognize the infinite nature of our individual being, the understanding of which there is only one true self in all of us. Number 4, begin to pour into the realization that to him that hath shall be given more. And that means to pour out all the love that you have to receive more. Number 5, demonstrate God and not things. In other words, you want to connect to the Creator, not the creations that are there. Number 6, meditate on God and all the things of God. And number 7, live in this moment, which is the only moment it is, and it's called the moment of Christhood. A full realization of any of these 7 principles that I just went over, by living and working with them all day, every day, week after week, would be sufficient enough to transform any experience and usher us into the kingdom of heaven that lies within. And I will give a deeper talk in the future about these 7 principles. But instead of trying to grasp the truth in a short span of just this talk or a day or a week, we should begin working with one principle and take that principle into our meditation daily for at least a month, dwelling on it until its inner meaning is revealed and it becomes a deeper part of ourselves. And then we can observe to what effect our words and our acts are in harmony with that principle that we've been working with. And as we do that, that principle becomes settled within us even more, and therefore becomes a deeper part of us. So, that being said, let's today practice and work on the last principle, which is living in the moment. And the only moment there is, which is the moments of Christhood. If we are sincere in our desire to experience God, we should make it a decision to let nothing stand in the way of our firm resolve and our steadfast purpose to connect to God. Not let anything in the way. It's a simple practice to help this, and that is by developing a consciousness where we call nowness, a state of todayness. This state of newness is achieved by consciously training ourselves to live only in the moment. By realizing, first of all, that we do not live on yesterday's manna that's already come and gone. Our responsibility is only for this day and this moment. And how are we expressing it? How are we connecting to it? Whatever demand is put on us, and there are lots of them during our days, let's fulfill it this moment. The practice of nowness develops a personal consciousness because there is nothing to do other than what's at hand in front of us. We're not concerned about the past or the future, but we got to deal with it. And by being there, that is connecting and being in the moment of Christhood. And when we do that, beloveds, we are never worried about our supply, nor any obligation that we have due during this today or tomorrow, because all there is today. The Bible says, the Christ liveth in me. And what that means is the Christ lives in my life for me. When that happens, no demands are placed upon me. Every demand is placed upon the Christ within. There is only the moment, this moment of the Christhood that's expressing itself. Yesterday does not exist. Tomorrow's not here yet. Matter of fact, even an hour ago or 5 minutes ago doesn't even exist. To stay awake every moment of the Christhood in our daily life. Our demonstration is to maintain our integrity to the highest degree which we are capable at any given moment. Think about that our highest degree is to be connected to God and to let God express through us, to speak through us, to deal with everything that comes our way during the day. If each of us could begin our day afresh with the realization of saying, I and the Father as one, are one, which is one of the teachings of Jesus, a very strong teaching, to remember I and the Father are one. I'm not separate. God is here within me, and I feel much safer knowing that truth. If we could do that, then it would make no difference as what our mistakes are, because they're not repeated again. Only our ego holds on to what's happened in the past. That's what I'm saying. We need to let it go. It's not being repeated today. And that relates to the statement in the Bible, go and sin no more. And of course, sin means not to just miss the mark. So once you have opened up to the Christ within you, you get to go to the next moment and let go of anything you may have judgments in yourself about what you did. It's time to let it go. That's only the ego. And in this moment when we are Christ consciousness, our life starts leading us to more spiritual fulfillment. So beloveds, we want to hold on steadfastly to this Christhood. We not only want to stand in the Christhood of who we are, but everybody else, knowing that we are all one. This life is not ours, it is God's. We belong to God. We know and teach here that God lives within us and as us. God is responsible for our life and our fulfillment once we open up to that. And when responsibility comes, let us be sure that we do not permit the human side of the big I to come forth and say, here it is, how can I accomplish this? How am I going to perform this? What happened here that I have to deal with? Oh, my strength is not sufficient. My bank account is not adequate. Those are the ego statements. Jesus did not allow the word I to get in the way when he was called upon to feed the 5,000, did he? No, he turned it over to God, knowing that God was going to be doing that. He acknowledged that of himself, he could do nothing. And we need to remember that too. So that the moment that we have a God experience, we no longer live our own life. God is living through us. So just think about and feel that, how it would be to really allow God every moment to deal with everything. The moment that we begin to live this life of the Spirit, which is a sufficiency through the statement, Christ I am, none of the things that are out in the world can afflict us unless we allow it to happen. But if we're doing it in the moment, when we bring ourselves into oneness with this law, with this principle, we know that it is a secret of spiritual living. It is the secret of the mystical life. And therefore, I and the Father are one, and all the Father has is mine. Oneness. If I'm one and all that God has is mine, what do I need to worry about? What do I need to struggle with? That statement says it constitutes righteousness and conscious union with God. We see the realization of God as our source and our supply, and the realization that only God can love. God can only love. And that's who we are and what we are, love, as I said in the beginning. It means that we want to let God's love flow through us to man and not claim any reward for it, because it is of God that's expressing through us, not our personality. Now, all these words may sound, I hope, encouraging and powerful, and the whole principle seems empowering to us to know that God operates through us and takes care of everything. There's nothing for us to worry about. And yet I know that as humans, we have a hard time living in the moment because our ego is up and we get concerned with things out there in life and we want to handle this and do that. And in the class that I teach and as I talk, it states we have to, it's called practicing the presence. It doesn't say we already have it solved. It's practicing it. So we have these opportunities every day to practice that presence in God over and over again. And to assist us in doing it, we get to connect to surrender, trust, and gratitude, which I've talked about as well. So let's first of all talk about surrendering. In other words, releasing personal ego will to God's will. Which, interesting enough, I tell all of you, if you have any ideas about talks that you want me to give, please do. Somebody did say, talk a little bit more about surrendering to God's will. So here we are. The greatest act of pure folly in human life is to live by the will of one's own personal ego. The personal ego is no more than a composite of limited knowledge and understanding. It has no more information to form its conclusions than the limitations of its outer sense perception, what's going on. From learned knowledge that we got from outside sources and our formal education, based upon outside knowledge. The problem with the outside knowledge that we keep wanting to look at is that even in the most sophisticated science, things are subject to change. Whatever a truism was today is tomorrow's fiction, right? Things change so quickly. Opinions, and people say, oh, it's not okay to drink coffee. Oh, it's okay to drink coffee. It's not okay to do this. It's okay to do this. It changes all the time. And so we have this flimsy criteria out there that our ego is founded on. Therefore, when our own personal ego begins to expound on its own will for our life, it stands on mental and emotional quicksand. Could easily just slide in. Whatever is hoped or wished or prayed for by our personal ego, time and time again can only turn out to be nothing but a mirage. Something that we think is real, but it's not. And then when that happens, if we connect to it, we are left in a mental and emotional desert, thirsting for a better life, but parched to the core. Think about that, not receiving the water and the source of life within us. In spite of such disillusionment, the average person today tends to cling to that illusion because they feel like it's right, it's the only thing they know of. That of their own ego and its will must be the definite decision maker in their life. So many people connected to that. And we are learning here, no. What we want to stay connected to is God, who knows all things. Many people begin to feel like if I give up the will of my personal ego, my life will be kind of barren. I'll have to live this austere life like the monks in a monastery maybe, because I don't have all the stuff out there that everybody else does. But the truth is quite the opposite. Because when we turn it over to God and we practice the presence, all of life's blessings become available to us. Greater number of opportunities become available. As I said to you when I started as a minister here a number of years ago, to get to this place, and knowing that I didn't ever want to be a pulpit minister, but to be here and to teach classes and to be a minister for support, I didn't know what to do. All it took was saying yes to God, and my mind could never have figured it out. It can't figure anything out. It thinks it can. But this God present, or I am that I am, then takes over your life when you truly release your ego's will to the will of God. Unlike the limitation of your personal ego's knowledge, God's knowledge is unlimited. God created everything there is. God is everywhere there is, so it's unlimited. It's universal standing about the universe and about you and everyone. The will of your personal ego is based on half-truth, a limited view of what your life was meant to be. On the other hand, God's view is unlimited. Anything is possible. When you give up your own will and you begin to see life through the eyes of God, you begin to realize more and more what's best for you, what feels right for me. What has its foundation in my very soul that I need to open up to more? And then, when you do that, you live these moments of Christhood. You become the light I am. You become the Christ I am. You become awake I am to the truth, to all that's there. And then you realize even more that only God knows what direction your life should take. Let me turn it over to God. I do not know. And the greatest progress for your soul then could be made in this lifetime. In the Bible, it says, he who loses himself, which is the personal ego and will, for my sake, the Christ, the God self, shall find himself, which is the true self and soul, one with Spirit of God. So again, he who loseth himself for my sake shall find himself one with the Spirit of God. Now, some people in the beginning of this work might be, I have to lose myself? I have to give up myself? I can't do that. That's scary. I don't want to do that. And yet it says, shall find himself one with the Spirit of God. That's where a lot of people forget to get connected to. It's not just about giving up and letting go and turning over. It's about connecting to something even bigger. People seem to think if they have to give up their own personal will, they got to let go of or relinquish their right to the joys or the indulgences of the flesh and the human life. But in reality, the only thing that's changed is your personal wisdom, how you see the experiences that go on around you. And thus, you're equipped to see things with a better eye. As I've said before, to see as God sees. That's how we want to see. We've lived in, if we could connect to and live in the mind of God, how would we see things? Well, we are there, so what would it be like if we could see through the eyes of God? This does not mean that our love for somebody else, our personal needs, our material needs, money, finances, other important facts are cast aside. We're not telling people to go be a monk and give everything up in your life. No. Turn it over to God and let everything come into your life. It's this time in your life to have the opportunity to grow and expand. And it leads to a greater possibility for enlightenment. So just think about that for a moment, that all of this, all I have to do is turn myself over to God and my life will be even more full. How does that sound? Remember, as I have said numerous times before, God is my good is my God. It is all one. So love is the answer. The love of God, the love of truth, the love of myself, the love of my neighbor. So, beloveds, from this time forth, it should be the function and the mission of all of us here that are practicing the presence to reveal that God is only experienced in proportion to how God is felt and expressed. Meaning that here's all this energy of God, but maybe we're only willing to express this much. That's okay. This much is all of God. Until we get bigger with it and let it grow more and let God come in more. So, our function to practice the presence, to reveal that God experienced, and I just said that, but again, in proportion as God is expressed. I become awake I am. Awake to the truth. And I express it more and more and allow it more. So, beloveds, I want you to carry this message in your mind and your heart, to always remember these principles that I went over. In your heart, to dwell upon the gift which has been given to you as devoted and delivered by our Father, Mother, God. All of what we want is here within us. It's just called practicing the presence, moment by moment. And when you do, the gift of the realized presence is within you. So, beloveds, I want you to bless it always and know that when you do, it will increase manyfold. Namaste.